What is up, my friends? We are back. It is Monday, and myself and David Lynch are here to talk through, well, the festivities against Aston Villa on Saturday, the state of where we are in the Premier League, and everything else in between. David, firstly, my friend, I hope you had a lovely weekend.
Yeah, always good when Liverpool win, which they keep doing at the moment, and then other results elsewhere capping it off. And it's just honestly a pleasure to be at Anfield at the moment because I feel like the place is flying, the team's doing so well, and everybody seems to be really happy. So you should kind of cherish these moments, I think, and I very much am. I'm enjoying going to work at the moment.
Absolutely. I keep coming back to what you said to James Pearce, I think it was, that this isn't normal. Like, it isn't normal. What we're living through right now needs to be celebrated.
Yeah, and that's it because I thought as well it was just going to be a little bit of a trickier start to the season. I thought, the transition element, you think Arsenal are really strong, even if City have a wobble, maybe Arsenal are going to be there. But the fact it's Liverpool kind of leading the way and doing so in such convincing fashion, yeah, just really unexpected and really nice. And, it looks like at this stage it is still early days, but it looks like there's going to be a title push at the very least and hopefully have a crack at the Champions League as well, which is just a lot more than I expected. So it's really enjoyable the way it's all working out under Arne Slot. And I'm, judging by the Anfield atmosphere, I think everybody else around me is really enjoying it as well.
Well, it's now 17 games played, 15 wins, one loss, one draw. Arne Slot sending us into the international break with a 5 point buffer over the defending champions, Manchester City. I might be wrong on this, David. I haven't fact checked it, but we've had worse starts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it does add that layer of sweetness that those two keep consistently dropping points as well. But I think you've got to focus as well on the fact that Liverpool have just been very good. I mean, they've won an awful lot of games and they deserve to do it. You look at all the underlying numbers, they're right up there. I think third for expected goals for, the top for expected goals against, so the best defense and the best underlying defense. So, and the performances are just really, really convincing, to a level that I just didn't expect. Liverpool just, they have more control in matches, and even in moments when they don't have control and maybe the opposition kind of play through the press a little bit, they just look so defensively solid. And also on top of all that, none of that real threat in attack has gone either. The likes of Mo Salah absolutely flying, Darwin Núñez is looking like a different player at the moment. So it's all just a really balanced, really, a team that's looking really, really good at the moment. And then you look at the rivals around them, and Arsenal really wobbling, and Manchester City the same, and it's just been an incredibly encouraging start and something I think to get excited about in terms of where Liverpool are going this season.
Yeah, it's hard to stay restrained at the moment. It is. So I want to go through a couple of individual performances from the game, but beforehand, I wanted to get your thoughts on the kickoff slot because we don't get many Saturday night 8 p.m. kickoffs. I wanted to get just from a personal level what it was like inside the ground, and as a journalist and a fan, would you welcome more of these Saturday 8 p.m. kickoffs?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason, obviously, that this one doesn't land at the 12:30 is because Villa have an away game in Europe on the Wednesday prior, so they have to move it. So Liverpool were thrown in that 12:30 slot. But I mean, if you give me a choice as someone who's going to the games in terms of Saturday 8 o'clock or 12:30, I mean, my wife may disagree, but I do probably prefer the 8 p.m. kickoffs because I think the atmosphere is just so much better. There's just more in the game. Night games are always better, full stop. But when it's that little bit later as well, and everyone's had a few pints, it just turns the atmosphere up a bit. Particularly if it's a big game like this against a good side like Aston Villa. And I think the 12:30. I think regardless of how it had played out, I just don't think you'd have got an atmosphere anywhere near that. I mean, people are only just digesting the breakfast by the time they get in the ground, and it just never gets going to the same degree. So for me, if you could swap 12:30s out completely and get rid of them because they're very rarely good ones anyway, and you could just get eight p.m.s in instead, I'd be all for that. But I suppose it's you'd have to ask most fans as well who've got season tickets how that disrupts them and whether that would be better for them or not. So it is just my opinion in isolation. But as I say, I really enjoy them. I think they're better, always a better atmosphere, and that always tends to make for a better game as well.
I guess it's the traveling away fans as well. You have to consider these.
Yeah.
Will there be public transport and stuff for them to get back? But as a spectacle, it was a rare Saturday night treat for me as a fan to sit back and watch Liverpool play. Now, on the game, this Mohamed Salah fella, he's probably worth keeping around. David, 10 goals, 10 assists already up this season. Only himself and Omar Marmoush putting up those numbers in Europe. Surely this love affair has to have another chapter.
Yeah, it's going to be unbelievable when those two are teammates next season, won't it?
It's
So,
gonna be brilliant, isn't it? It's gonna be top
yeah,
notch.
it's with Mo, he's just kind of running out of superlatives. Really, I mean, I just kind of get to the end of the match and I start writing down notes from a match review or whatever, and I'm kind of just like, oh yeah, Mo Salah got to get an assist and a goal in a 2-0 win. He's absolutely the key architect of it. And I mean, if it'd been any other forward, it's the first thing you note upon. It's the first you say, oh, Darwin Núñez, unbelievable today or whatever. He's the man of the match. And with Mo, you're just so used to him doing that you don't even sort of feel like it is merit to mention at times. So, we've got too used to how good he is. But the fact is, we would realise how good he is if Liverpool went into next season having to replace his goals, his assists, his overall contribution, his importance around the place. So, look, it's on the recruitment staff. If they're willing to get themselves in that position, they have to get themselves out. They have to find someone who will do what Mo Salah does. And I think going into the next couple of seasons, it's hard to imagine anyone who could do that. Maybe Marmoush is the one, actually, but we'll have to see how that kind of plays out. But I just think they've got a huge job on if they're willing to get themselves in a situation where Mo will leave on a free, because you can make the argument about his decline that will happen at some point. But I think there's a fair argument to say, well, he'll still be banging in goals and assists at a decent rate for next season at the very least. And so to let him go ahead of that would feel like a travesty, really, and something the recruitment staff would have to solve. And I would not like to be in their shoes if they were to do that. It's just a very, very strong argument to get that done. Obviously, that compromise has to be found somewhere, but the prospect of losing him and what that would do to Liverpool is kind of frightening to think about. Really, he's so crucial as he was on Saturday evening.
Well, I think the COP sent their request to the owners about what they would like for Mohamed Salah. I don't know if you've seen Lewis Steele's little thread on X as well, where he was comparing Mookie Betts of the Boston Red Sox. Now, David, I'm the first to admit I know nothing about Major League Baseball, mate. Absolutely nothing. But there is precedent there for them letting a player go who maybe was a standard bearer at the Red Sox, who's then gone on to win 2 World Series, I believe, since. Look, we all make mistakes in life. Sometimes you take calculated risks. Sometimes you want it to pay off for the future. And I'm going to come on to a similar situation in my mind, actually, at the moment, outside of the attacking department. But in this one, I don't know what more Mo can do at this point, because he's scoring goals. Fitness is there. We also got a lovely little boost, by the way, which I wanted your take on, the fact that he isn't called up during this international break, which I think is going to stand us in really good stead for the festive period. He's doing his part. The fans are doing their part. It feels like he wants to stay, David, but of course we're not in these negotiations, so we hope the common ground can be found there.
Yeah, the key thing to mention in that, and I saw what Lewis had written about that, and I thought it was interesting, though. But the key aspect here is that it's not John Henry making the decision. What FSG do, and the reason that they've been so successful at Liverpool, is that they empower the people below them to make the decisions. So, it will be down to Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes and what they see for the squad going into next season and how they use their budget. And we know there's enough budget for Mo Salah because he's currently on 350 grand a week. So, that the assumption is that is there for next season if he wants to stay. But they have to find a deal that works for everyone, and whether that is on the same amount for a couple of years, the same amount for 1 year, or 3 years at a slightly lesser amount, whatever, they have to find the way to that. But I don't think it's not going to be the case that John Henry's bringing anybody up and telling them how to do their jobs. This will be a sporting decision that is made by Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards, and they, not FSG for me, will be the ones who have to back it up if they decide that it isn't the right deal for them to extend Mo Salah, and they have to back that up by saying, look, we've got this guy who can replace his output, whoever that is. What a fine that will be, by the way, if they can do that. And they have to stand by those decisions. It's literally as simple as that for me. There's no point, I think, kind of blaming FSG if Mo Salah goes. It'll be the people that they've appointed who've made that decision, and if they do make that decision, they've got to back it up in big time, and that will be an unbelievable test of them. So we'll see how that kind of plays out if they can't find a compromise there. But I do think it's massively helpful that Mo Salah clearly wants to stay, doesn't he? He's happy. He wants to keep breaking records. So that's a really nice bargaining chip for Liverpool. So I'd like to think they get it sorted out.
And the fact that he hasn't been called up this international break for Egypt, I think they've already qualified for the AFCON, if I'm not mistaken, but that is going to be a major boost for 2 reasons. One, it maybe gives him a chance to get around the table, have a chat with a little bit of downtime, but also it allows Mo to rest up ahead of what is going to be a really hectic period now, right up until March before the next international break. I think Arne Slot mustn't believe his luck that he has Mo for this window. It's as a fan, I'm absolutely over the moon, because this surely means good things for us.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this new Egypt manager's a bit of a legend, really, at Anfield, isn't he? I mean, he keeps just letting him miss games, and his, as you say, great news to Liverpool, because I think we have seen in recent seasons a couple of slight drop offs in the back half of the season, not quite as good. I mean, AFCON was a big factor last season. The fact he hasn't got one of those here this time around is helpful for Liverpool. And by the way, possibly something that comes up in contract talks going into the next season, something to think about. But any rest he can get from international games is massive. I mean, he can just sit at home now, rest, and you just think, these little rests from time to time and playing a less intense style of football. Can Liverpool kind of reap the rewards of that come the end of the season? Can they get a fresh Mo Salah all the way through till the end of May? And will that be a key factor in them going on to lift trophies rather than just missing out as he did last season? You'd like to think so. So yeah, I think it's massively helpful, and it's great that you've got that good relationship with Egypt as well. That seems to be paying off.
So I'm going to shift it up completely and move to the goalkeeping department for a moment, because once again we've seen Caoimhin Kelleher come in and have a great display. Now, David, I'm going to pitch you an idea that is going to sound absolutely insane, but please do hear me out, and anybody listening. So we've been talking about this in our live streams quite a bit recently, and I'm of the mindset that right now we've got Caoimhin Kelleher, 25 years of age, doing brilliantly. Georgie Mamardashvili, obviously at Valencia, we don't know what the future holds there. And Alisson Becker, 31, 32 years of age, the best goalkeeper in the world, in my opinion, and of course, Jaros. Now, we've spoken about the conundrum of the goalkeeping department for the future. Is there anything to be said for selling Alisson Becker in a year or sooner? Because for me, David, this is my thinking. We don't know what the future holds for Alisson around potential hamstring concerns. We hope that they are a short-term thing that don't have a knock-on effect. But also, we don't know if in a year or 2 years' time he wants another challenge. What we do know right now is we have a 25-year-old goalkeeper in Caoimhin Kelleher and a 24-year-old goalkeeper in Georgie Mamardashvili, who could sort our goalkeeping department out for the next 7, 8, 9 years. I think this is equally as important a decision as the ones around Mohamed Salah and his future, because right now we've got the best of all worlds. We've got 4 great goalkeepers, one in Jaros who's less tested than the other 3. But honestly, if I'm in Edwards and Hughes' shoes, I'm looking at the Alisson situation thinking, do I really want to lose Kelleher? We could have a 25 and a 24-year-old going head-to-head for 7 or 8 years. It is a disgusting conversation to have because Alisson's the best in the world. But I think it's a pragmatic conversation.
Yeah, well, I think the beauty of Liverpool's position is that they're protected against whatever happens. So you've got 4 goalkeepers to choose from there who are top class. And so, regardless of how it kind of shakes up going into next summer, you're going to have 2 really, really good goalkeepers on the books and number 1 and number 2. So I would say it's a live possibility that Alisson leaves next summer. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed. A lot is up in the air, but if that Saudi offer comes and he just decides it's the right time, Liverpool won't stand in his way if they get a decent fee. So that is a genuine possibility that Liverpool have to contend with. The problem is with Kelleher in terms of keeping him is that I believe he's only got 1 year left in his contract at the end of this season. So Liverpool don't have a lot of control there. And from the players' side of things as well, very much my understanding that he's just desperate to get out there now and get playing. He really did want to go last summer. Not that he hates it at Liverpool and he's unhappy, but he's just ready to go out and be a number 1 somewhere. And I absolutely think he's ready and he deserves to do that. And for Liverpool, they can't make the case to him to sign a new contract because they have got Mamardashvili coming in. They've got Jaros, who's very close and doing really well. There just isn't the argument there for them to make that they can offer him being the first choice, because that torpedoes the plan with Mamardashvili and potentially keeping Jaros around. So I think the agreement is just going to come regardless next summer that he does move on. But we do not know what will happen with Alisson. That is up in the air. But I think for Caoimhin, we can quite confidently say that he's going to move on next summer. And I still think Liverpool will get a decent fee for him as well on the basis of his performances this season, because he's been fantastic.
I was wondering then, there's nothing to be said for maybe splitting the goalkeeping department for a season, 1 Champions League, 1 Premier League, and letting Caoimhin Kelleher and Georgie Mamardashvili battle it out, because as we've said, we don't know how Mamardashvili settles in. We don't. He may come in and be the goalkeeper we all believe he's going to be, which is a top-notch one, but he may take a little bit of time to settle in, particularly with the style of us playing out from the back and the way that we do. I guess my fear, David, is that if we sold Kelleher and Alisson does start to pick up an injury or 2, or does decide he would like to leave, we've then gone from a situation where we've got an abundance of great goalkeepers to maybe being a little bit under the gun again with regards to availability of keepers. It's a difficult situation, but I must say it's also a good headache for the club to have.
Yeah, but I think in terms of alternating your goalkeepers like that, I think if you're Kelleher, probably doesn't appeal. You want to get, I would make the case that the one club that should be in for him above all others is Chelsea. They should be absolutely banging Liverpool's door down to get him and have him in their, possibly Champions League / Premier League squad next season. So he would get all those games. He absolutely should be, pushing for a move of that caliber as well, really. So I think, he would look elsewhere and think there's a better offer out there for me here. And the thing is with the Mamardashvili and Alisson situation, because Alisson staying or going is a live possibility, you also have that possibility of saying to Mamardashvili next summer, okay, you come in this season, be our cup goalkeeper. This is going to be Alisson's next season. You be the backup. You get plenty of games because he gets injured all the time, and you will have the cups as well and a few appearances there. You get used to our style of football. And then the season after that, you step up to be the replacement. And maybe in the meantime, Yaros is out on loan. Then he comes back to be second choice. They've just got an awful lot of options there, but I just don't see how any of those play out with Kelleher being at the club next season. I think it's the right time for him to be sold from his perspective, but also for Liverpool as well because of the contractual situation. And they're probably not going to be able to convince him to sign a new one. So I just can't see a world where he's at Liverpool next season.
It is weird, though. You look at it and you just think, well, why was he never considered for the number one spot? We brought in Mamardashvili, and he's only ever shown promise. If I'm Caoimhin Kelleher, I probably am feeling a little bit hard done by in this situation, to be honest with you, because he's been professional. I'll give him that to the highest degree. The club have managed the situation well as well, in fairness to them. But he certainly could look at this and think, well, what more could I have done?
Yeah, that is fair as well. But I would also, to mitigate that, I'd also say the club see him up close. Maybe there are aspects of his game that they think we need to be stronger there. And if we are to replace Alisson, it needs to be someone who's slightly that step above Caoimhin. But you're right to say that on the evidence of what we've seen, why has he never sort of come into contention to be the successor? And I guess another part of it as well is maybe that, he's looked at himself and thought that, when is Alisson going to go? I might be waiting here for something that's not going to come. And the club have acknowledged that and thought he is so keen to go. We have to get ahead of this. We can't take the risk of saying to Queeve, keep staying around. It'll happen because they can't predict either. They can't offer him any guarantees, and that is part of it. But I think there's no question whatsoever that he's a very, very good goalkeeper who you would not mind having in net for Liverpool. And I think he's going to go elsewhere and kind of show that. But it's just not worked out for him to be the number one at Liverpool, which is a shame because he's unbelievable, really, and a great character and really liked around the place. But it's that's football sometimes, just sliding doors moments. The timing doesn't line up, and he's going to get his move next summer, no doubt.
I should say, by the way, Georgie Mamardashvili does look like an absolutely outstanding goalkeeper, and I can completely see where the club went to try to bring him in. It's almost like they've reincarnated Alisson, but made him a little bit bigger, a little bit broader, which I didn't think was even possible because, my God, he's a big lump of a man himself. So I wanted to move on to Trent, and I wanted to ask, do we know of a prognosis, really, for the hamstring strain that Trent picked up?
Yeah, so thankfully not too bad. Expectation is take the international break and kind of heal that up, and then we'll see for Southampton. Maybe not, but the games after that, there's hope and expectation that he will be available. So I think that's really, really good news. I mean, one of the things that the new medical staff are quite big on is getting ahead of problems like that. Don't try and run it off when you're on the pitch. Sit down, let's get you off, and hopefully we're restricted. So, in a perfect world, he just misses the England games and he comes back for Liverpool straight after that. That's definitely the hope. We'll see how that plays out. But that's better news than you kind of expect when he goes down touching his hamstring. You're thinking this could be 5 or 6 weeks, but it's not. It's kind of low grade on the basis of the scan results he's had. So I think a really good news for Liverpool.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could just go through this international break, and even if it is a week or so on the other side of that, it's still not as bad as it could have been. So I wanted to also ask on the Trent contract situation, has there been any indication from Trent to the club about whether he's decided whether he'd like to stay or he'd like to go? Because as a fan, and this is me pitching this idea as a fan, I've seen Trent and Mo and Virgil and many other players want to see what happens after Jurgen decided he was leaving. That's completely understandable. Then they appointed Arne Slot, and Trent may have said, well, I need to see what Arne's like up close. I need to see what his methods are like. And of course, I need to see if Liverpool are going to be challenging for major honours moving forward. I think all of those questions have been answered. So I think the new manager coming in, everybody loves. His methods are certainly ones that seem to be popular with the boys on the training pitch. Trent has spoken about the improvements he's made in his game. You can also see that Liverpool are at the very least going to be competitive. So I'm running out of questions that Trent needs answering at this point as a fan, because I had sympathy and completely understood how they'd want to see what life after Jurgen's going to be like, particularly for Trent, where Jurgen played such a big role in his development as a footballer and probably as a man and a person as well. So at this point, David, I think the club have answered those questions for Trent. And now it comes down to Trent's decision about what he wants to do for his future. I hope he communicates that quickly, because nobody wants this dragging out into the January window and onwards.
Yeah, so from my perspective and everyone I speak to at Liverpool, no suggestion he's turned around to Liverpool and said, no, I'm not going to stay. I want to go to Real Madrid. I want to try that. Let's cease talks. We don't want to do that. And I think if it had got to that point, it would have come out by now as well. It would be out there that those talks are done and it's not happening. So no indication on Liverpool's side that that's the case. So, very much my understanding, talks are still ongoing and working through those issues. And there are complexities there as well in terms of, image rights and small, these things that we don't think about. We just think, it should be X amount of week for this long. Are you going to sign it or are you not? There are complexities to these contracts that they do have to iron out. And sometimes that's why it takes so long. But, and we know Liverpool are desperate to keep him. They've had no indication from his side that he's going out there to try something new, or certainly not at this point yet. So, I still think he should be. We're just waiting for news now and for those little elements to be ironed out, and hopefully then we'll get an announcement on that soon.
Yeah, I think we all want 3 extensions. Fans, of course, we always will, but we will see how this one pans out. Now, switching it up slightly, but staying in the defence, I have a straightforward question for you. Are Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate now the best centre-back pairing in the Premier League? Because on form this season, it certainly looks that way to me, but of course, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I'm going to be biased about this. But they look as good as anybody else, David.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they've both been massively helped by being part of a more kind of, sane setup, really, in terms of what's going on in front of them. They're not having to, Konate in particular is not having to cover these huge spaces as he has typically in recent years. And they're both just getting to be centre-halves. And when they get to be centre-halves, they prove that they are two of the best in the world. And look, you only have to look at the goals conceded column, the expected goals against, the underlying numbers support the fact that this is the best defensive side in the league. And, and a big part of that is the fact you've got two absolutely world-class centre-halves there. And this isn't a case either of kind of, the way Arsenal set up. We know that there's an element of, I think they get overly criticised for it, but an element of negativity to how they set up. And they are very much about no risks and protect that back four. And as good as I think Saliba and Gabriel are, and I do think they are fantastic, they've benefited from that setup a lot. We've started to see when issues have been popping up in recent weeks in terms of injuries and what's going on in front of them. Those two haven't looked anywhere near as secure, whereas I think Virgil van Dijk and Konate have proved it as a pairing, even in a madness and an open system. And they're proving it even more when they're in this setup that Arne Slot has put together. So for me, absolutely the two best centre-halves in the Premier League individually. And of course, by virtue of that, the best pairing as well. And a big part of why Liverpool are doing so well this season defensively and why they're doing so well generally.
And also why we're 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League, David. I have to get that one in as well, because God, it's nice to say. Wanted to move on to Aurélien Tchouameni for a moment, because we've had discussions on this show about stylistically whether we think Aurélien Tchouameni would still be a good fit for Liverpool, but the links are still coming out. Now, I should say these links are mainly coming from the Spanish side, and as a fan, to me, this looks like Madrid maybe have decided they want to cash in and are starting to connect our name to Aurélien Tchouameni to try and ramp up interest. Would that be a fair assessment of how you view it, or is there still maybe an interest in Tchouameni from Liverpool?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you on that one in terms of where this is being driven from. That clearly it looks like he's going to be for sale, either in January or in the coming summer, and Real Madrid are kind of trying to push out some interest there and see if anyone wants to bite. But sometimes you can think because Liverpool were in for a player once, they're definitely going to want him again, and I'm not entirely sure that's going to be the case with Chouameni. I think Jurgen Klopp was a huge fan of him and a big driver of wanting him. And we've said before about maybe Liverpool looking for a slightly different profile at the base of that midfield now, and I'm not entirely sure that Chouameni fits that anymore. So I think things have kind of changed there. And as you say, the fact the reports are coming from Spain, I think it's just clearly trying to drive interest up in the player. But I wouldn't, put any money on the fact that Liverpool would be at the front of the queue this time, which is different to what I would have said maybe 6 or 7 months ago.
Are there any names that you're hearing murmured around that maybe Liverpool are keeping tabs on ahead of maybe January or the window? I mean, Baleba did really well when he came on the other day against Manchester City. Obviously, we always have the conversation about if Zubimendi changed his mind. Are there any other names that you're hearing or seeing popping up?
All quiet, to be honest, at the moment. I think there is potential there for a midfield signing in January, just on the basis that Liverpool do business in January. If the opportunity is there for a player they think improves them in the long term, they're not reluctant to do that. And I still think there's a bit of a vacancy there in that midfield in terms of the sheer numbers. I think they just need one more who the manager's big on. Baleba looks tough to get out for me, but it being so early in his Brighton career, and obviously they drive an unbelievably hard bargain. They'll want to keep hold of him for a little bit longer. And Zubimendi, I suppose Real Sociedad's form slightly starting to improve, but again, if they think that their season's aims are not there to be got at, then and an agreement's reached. But it's a big ask that a player has decided he's going to stay and then has a U-turn in January. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think he's a player who Liverpool had identified as perfect for what they needed in the summer window, and I doubt very much has changed on that front. But it's a big question of whether could that be got in January, or does he get to the end of the season and decide that's the time for him to move on? And if that is the case, are Liverpool just going to wait and keep the powder dry until then? We'll have to see.
We had a similar situation actually with Ederson of Atalanta. I think it was Corriere dello Sport said Liverpool have been negotiating for months with Ederson, and as much as I would love that, I would even put that one in the can't see it happening camp, unfortunately, because again, that's a stylistic question.
Yeah, never ever a name that I got any encouragement whatsoever on over the summer. I know he repeatedly was linked, but nobody at Liverpool suggested there was anything in that. Or would go further than that and suggest there was nothing in that actually, and he was not going to be a target for Liverpool. So I think that's one you can quite easily knock down. Don't think Liverpool are going to be in for him.
Now, speaking of Liverpool, really quick before we finish up, just as we were going to start recording, the David Coote video came out. Now, obviously, I wanted to ask for, as a fan, because we are both Liverpool fans as well, what do you make of hearing David Coote speak about Jurgen Klopp in such a manner, and the naivety of him sitting there for that video?
I think naivety is the perfect description. I think you're foolish, really, and just unbelievable that someone has done that. I mean, we have to kind of mention, or maybe it'll be AI, or maybe it's been mocked up or whatsoever, just to kind of cover ourselves, I guess. But I mean, I'm not sure AI of that level is publicly available and is being used to mock up referees talking about Liverpool. So I'd be very, very surprised if it was anything but real. But yeah, crazy, really. Just I think at the end of the day, you see the response to it now. So everybody's bringing up the decisions he's made that's affected Liverpool. For example, the Odegaard handball at Anfield last season, a big one, and I'm sure there are a few others as well that are coming up. And the fact is, whether those were made from a position of being biased against Liverpool or not, the fact that he sowed that doubt by filming that video and allowing that to get out there means that it's very hard to see how his job is tenable going forward, because I just think, they have to be above that. They have to be, they can't be called into question in that way. And I'm one of those people who I like to think I'm a bit more accepting of referees making mistakes than not. And for example, the red card situation or potential red card situation around Aston Villa at the weekend, for me, it's just a mistake that I would like to think, had the ball not ended up in the back of the net, would have been called back by VAR. But if you film a video like that and you allow it to get out there, people will doubt now, and they will question. And if there is any decision he's involved in a Liverpool game or a Liverpool rival that they're in the title race with, that will get called into question. And I just think that is not a position that PGMOL can afford to be in. And so through his own, you have to call it stupidity. It's crazy that he's done that. He's putting himself in a position where I'm sure that surely the PAGMOL are going to take a really, really dim view of this, and his future as a Premier League ref might well be in doubt.
Well, we never want anybody to lose their employment, of course. It isn't our place to say what happens, but certainly a naive thought process is the kindest I'm going to be about it, because we'll let the powers that be deal with it, but certainly isn't a great look. David, we've come to an end. Time has beaten us. I just want to ask again before we finish up what you have coming up on your Substack, of course, your YouTube channel, being the fact that it is now the last, thankfully, international break before March.
Yeah, so loads to get into over this break. If people want to check out on Substack and YouTube, I'm going to have a kind of look at where Liverpool's underlying numbers rank across title contenders in recent years, and whether they're good enough to win the title, although obviously the obvious answer at the moment is yes. And also going to kind of have a little bit of a deeper look at how Arne Slot's Liverpool compare with Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, and see exactly what's changed in the style and how that's affecting Liverpool. So I quite like the international break for getting to have a look at these deeper things and not being at press conferences and matches every couple of days. So I'm going to make the most of this one. So please do check it out if you can.
Always a pleasure chatting with David, and always a pleasure chatting with you guys live or on recorded stuff as well. It's always a pleasure to give you our thoughts on all things Liverpool related. So let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, and please do hit that subscribe button, as well as checking out David on Substack and, of course, his YouTube channel. We'll catch up with you soon, my friends. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.